Hi, welcome to the bathtub. You know me, it's the old masturbator, Scott Bradfield. You call grandma, call the kids. There's master bathing going on in here. That's all. Just remember, there's nothing grandma and the kids can't see. And we're going to do something here today. Don't forget, 5,000 subscriber. Don't miss it. If you missed the moon landing, you missed the Kennedy assassination, you don't want to miss the 5,000 subscriber episode because we're going to have a live something. I don't know how it works exactly. I forget how we did it. We did a live something before, and I can't remember how we did it. So I'll bring out all my technical expertise and try to push the right button to start a live chat. And today we're going to do something. You know, it's one of the things we never hear here at the bathtub is no one ever calls or writes us or chats with us and says, you know, we need more theme shows. You don't have enough theme shows on the show because we are a plethora. We're an abundance of theme shows. We have so many theme ideas we don't know what to do with them all. So we never tire, and we've come up with a new one today, or I came up with a new one in the past few days. And it's a little bit of a background story. One of the things is I've always loved poetry. I love to read poetry in the bathtub, and we hardly ever talk about poetry here. And in the course of the past few weeks, you know, we did that little response to the 100 best books, quote, best books in the New York Times list, which had literally I think it had one book with some poems in it or something. I can't remember, but very little poetry, if any. And one of our bathing buddies, so this is Bob Black, a very good poet, very fine poet of his own, is himself, a very fine poet himself, as I've read from his Facebook postings of his poetry. And Bob was very kind to send me some books. I want to preface this by saying, please don't send me books. Please don't send me. Some nice people have sent me books. I really appreciate it. It's very thoughtful, but please don't. I don't know where to put them. And I'm constantly trying to get rid of books. And I very rarely read anything. I just even as much as you love it. I'm so busy trying to read the stuff that I want to reread in my twilight years, and I just don't have room for much. But anyway, Bob sent me 3 books of poetry by people other than himself, and there were poets. 2 of the poets were poets I know and really like, but I didn't have these books. And one of them was a poet I'd never heard of, but it looks interesting. And so I kept thinking, well, we really should do more poetry in the bathtub. I have my most reticence about talking about poetry is I have nothing to say about poetry. I like it. There's very little poetry I read that I don't like, and some I like more than other poetry I read. I just like poetry, and I like to read it in the bathtub. And it does something to my brain. It just hits me in a way that fiction doesn't. And I find it very inspirational. I like the way language works, the way thoughts and ideas come through it. And it helps me, particularly as a writer, because it kind of loosens up the old gears, and I think it's kind of a selfish reason for poetry. Anyway, this is a new series, a new theme series. It's going to be called Living Poets Corner. Oh, I think this should be a theme song for this. I'll try to find it. I know what the theme song should be if I can find it. Anyway, we'll try to have a theme song. And I was thinking of doing we could do a roundup. I did 2 or 3 books, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to take one book of poetry, not a complected, not one of these big, giant, massive books, but just a single volume of poetry, like a single short story collection by an author, and just read a couple of passages that I liked. Because I have nothing to say about these writers, really, except that I like them. And so the first one I'm going to start with is the first one that I read that Bob Black sent us. And Bob, please don't send any more books, because I just give them to your nephews and your nieces and stuff, because I can get books, but I really appreciate this. It got me to read Louise Glück again, who I do. I've always enjoyed Louise Glück. Glück. It has the umlaut. I'm completely lost. There's an umlaut in it. And I'd read her many times over the decades, and I had not heard of this book. See, I don't really keep up with what's coming out. And this is called Faithful and Virtuous Night. It came out in 2014, and it won the National Book Award. That's everything I know about this book and Louise Glück. I mean, I don't know anything about her except she teaches at Yale. Okay, that's great. But I really like her poetry. So all I'm going to do is, first of all, I read this over the last couple mornings in the bathtub, where they should be read, and enjoyed them very much. And I particularly found them interesting because they're about a woman who's clearly at my age, looking back on their lives and the people they've lost and the family members are no longer around, and the sort of things that go through your mind as you're growing old and you realize you're probably going to die. You're probably going to die. I'm pretty sure, I'm almost certain There's almost nothing I can do about it. Cheers, clear mountain water. Stay hydrated if you're going to die. And she has some poems. So I'm going to do something here. I have no idea. I know I can't. I know I can get sued if I play music from other people. I'm going to read some passages from these, just passages I liked, and invite you to go pick up a copy of this book, which I enjoyed very much. Okay, so the first one is, I'm going to read, this is called An Adventure. I'm just going to read I'm not going to read an entire poem, because I have the feeling maybe they can sue me more. Hopefully, Louise, don't sue me. I'm just trying to get people to read your book. This is the second poem in the book, and she kind of had me by the second poem. It's called An Adventure. It came to me one night as I was falling asleep that I had finished with those amorous adventures to which I had long been a slave. That's something you think about a lot as you get older. Finished with love, my heart murmured, to which I responded that many profound discoveries awaited us, hoping, at the same time, I would not be asked to name them. For I could not name them, but the belief that they existed. Surely this counted for something. The next night brought the same thought, this time concerning poetry, and in the nights that followed, various other passions and sensations were, in the same way, set aside forever, and each night my heart protested its future, like a small child being deprived of a favorite toy. But these farewells, I said, are the way of things. And once more I alluded to the vast territory opening to us with each valediction. And with that phrase I became a glorious knight, riding into the setting sun, and my heart became the steed underneath me. I was, you will understand, entering the kingdom of death, though why this landscape was so conventional I could not say. Here, too, the days were very long, while the years were very short. The sun sank over the far mountain, the stars shone, the moon waxed and waned. Soon faces from the past appeared to me. My mother and father, my infant sister. They had not, it seemed, finished what they had to say, though now I could hear them, because my heart was still. The whole poem is a lovely poem. I'll stop it there. But the people that she keeps visiting, a lot of visionary sort of poems and dreams of people you knew or people you lost in your life, which I have more as I get older. Anyway, I'll read a couple more passages I really loved. I'm just going to read the first half of these poems and send you off to read the whole book. This poem is called Visitors from Abroad, and I don't remember these except that I wanted to read them to you. Visitors from Abroad. Some time after I had entered that time of life, people preferred to allude to in others, but not in themselves, in the middle of the night, the phone rang. It rang and rang, as though the world needed me, though really it was the reverse. I lay in bed trying to analyze the ring. It had my mother's persistence and my father's pained embarrassment. When I picked it up, the line was dead. Or was the phone working and the caller dead? Or was it not the phone but the door, perhaps? My mother and father stood in the cold in the front steps. My mother stared at me, a daughter, a fellow female. You never think of us, she said. I've been writing about this myself, some of this stuff. This book really hit me for some of the connections of things that are going through my own head, my own work lately. We read your books when they reach heaven. Hardly a mention of us anymore, hardly a mention of your sister, and they pointed to my dead sister, a complete stranger, tightly wrapped up in my mother's arms. But for us, she said, you wouldn't exist. And your sister, you have your sister's soul, after which they vanished like Mormon missionaries. Lovely poem. I want to read again one last little passage. I love this opening. I love this whole poem, but the opening particularly. The Sword and the Stone. It's set in an analyst's office. I think she does a great job with this. My analyst looked up briefly. Naturally, I couldn't see him, but I had learned in our years together to intuit these movements. As usual, he refused to acknowledge whether or not I was right. My ingenuity versus his evasiveness. Our little game. At such moments, I felt the analysis was flourishing. It seemed to bring out in me a sly vivaciousness I was inclined to repress. My analyst's indifference to my performances were now immensely soothing. An intimacy had grown up between us, like a forest around a castle. The blinds were closed, vacillating bars of light advanced across the carpeting through a small strip above the windowsill. I saw the outside world. I love that. I love that little shift she makes between the analysis and going inside this interior landscape and then seeing the world outside. Anyway, it's a lovely book of poems. Thanks, Bob. Don't send me any more, please. I've got tons of poetry. We'll try to do a Living Poets Corner regularly now here at the Bathtub. Faithful and Virtuous Night by Louise Glück. Gluck. I think it's Gluck. Anyway, stay safe. Read some poetry. Take it in the bathtub. It's really fun. Okay.